Hello everyone, my name's Peter, I'm the Dungeon Doctor. Welcome to this video on how to optimize the way of Drunken Master Monk. Before I start this video, I again want to thank everyone who has recently subscribed. The Blade Singer Monk build I did in my last video did far better than any of my previous videos. And best of all, it was a video I really enjoyed making. So yeah, the appreciation you've all shown me from the last 2 weeks has been insane. And I want to let you all know that it's driving me to make better content in future, starting with this video really. If you want to jump right ahead to the build as opposed to going through my overview of the subclass features, take a look at the chapter section below and you'll be able to skip right ahead to the parts that you enjoy. With that in mind, and without any further ado, let's optimize the way of Drunken Master Monk.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
Let's look at why we'd actually want to play the way of Drunken Master Monk. The subclass takes a lot of influence from the Jackie Chan movie of the same name, The Legend of the Drunken Master. In that film, Jackie Chan's character draws a lot of his strength from drinking. The more drunk he gets, the more powerful he gets. And the kind of martial arts on display in that film is from a real-life martial art, drunken boxing, and it's just a joy to behold. It's your really traditional kung fu action flick. But let's see what the book describes the way of Drunken Master as being like. The way of the Drunken Master teaches its students to move with the jerky, unpredictable movements of a drunkard. A drunken master sways, tottering on unsteady feet, to present what seems like an incompetent combatant who proves frustrating to engage. The drunken master's erratic stumbles conceal a carefully executed dance of blocks, parries, advances, attacks, and retreats. A drunken master often enjoys playing the fool, to bring gladness to the despondent, or to demonstrate humility to the arrogant. But when battle is joined, the drunken master can be a maddening, masterful foe. Let's look at the subclass features. At level 3, the way of the Drunken Master gains bonus proficiencies and drunken technique. With bonus proficiencies, you gain proficiency in the performance skill if you don't already have it. Your martial arts technique mixes combat with the precision of a dancer and the antics of a jester. You also gain proficiency with brewer supplies if you don't already have it. Additionally, you gain drunken technique. With this, you learn how to twist and turn quickly as part of your flurry of blows. Whenever you use flurry of blows, you gain the benefit of the disengage action, and your walking speed increases by 10 feet until the end of the current turn. The bonus proficiencies we get from this subclass are nice flavour, however the performance skill is a bit difficult to use as a monk. As a monk, we tend to not invest many ability score increases into charisma, and so our performance skill is generally not that great. However, I could see instances where a monk may be able to persuade a DM to allow them to make a dexterity-based performance check, such as if they're doing some kind of acrobatic performance based on their martial arts. Meanwhile, drunken technique is essentially combining 3 of the features that the monk gains at 2nd level into one single action. The flurry of blows technique, the disengage action from Step of the Wind, and part of the dash action from Step of the Wind also. Drunken technique seems to make this subclass really good at hit and run tactics, where you can move in fast, make several attacks, and then withdraw very easily without any worry of opportunity attacks. At 6th level, we gain Tipsy Sway. With this, you can move in sudden, swaying ways. You gain the following benefits. Leap to your feet. When you are prone, you can stand up by spending 5 feet of movement rather than half your speed. Redirect attack. When a creature misses you with a melee attack roll, you can spend 1 key point as a reaction to cause that attack to hit one creature of your choice, other than the attacker, that you can see within 5 feet of you. Leap to your feet is a bit of a circumstantial ability, You will find instances where you're knocked prone and need to get up and then travel very far, but they tend to be few and far between. Better would be to find instances where you can knock yourself prone. You can drop yourself prone at any point during your turn, and the advantage you have with this is that it puts all ranged attacks against you at disadvantage. And then on your next turn, you can only spend 5 feet to get up, and then continue your movement as normal, making it a viable tactic for you. Redirect attack, I think, is the most unique feature that the subclass gets, and it's why I'd be most inclined to build a class around. Being able to make a creature hit another creature without fail is very useful, particularly when those creatures have much more powerful attacks than you might. At 11th level, we gain the feature Drunkard's Luck. With this, you always seem to get a lucky bounce at the right moment. When you make an ability check, an attack roll, or a saving throw, and have disadvantage on the roll, you can spend 2 key points to cancel the disadvantage for that roll. Drunkard's Luck sounds like a bit of a circumstantial ability again, but it is an out-of-combat ability, which tends to be rare for monks. I like Drunkard's Luck most on monks who are making lots of skill checks, because those are the instances where you're most likely to have disadvantage on one of these rolls. Lastly, at 17th level, we gain Intoxicated Frenzy. With this, you gain the ability to make an overwhelming number of attacks against a group of enemies. When you use your Flurry of Blows, you can make up to 3 additional attacks with it, up to a total of 5 Flurry of Blows attacks, provided that each Flurry of Blows attack targets a different creature this turn. Intoxicated Frenzy sounds good on paper. However, in reality, making just 1 attack against each of the creatures you can target with it isn't going to amount to much damage on each of them. I see it more as a way to potentially spam Stunning Strike early into a combat. If you can target 5 enemies plus the 2 from your extra attack feature, you could potentially stun up to 7 creatures in a single round and make the rest of the combat a lot easier. The Drunken Master has an interesting mix of abilities with both combat and out-of-combat features spread throughout. None of the abilities actually rely on their wisdom score, except maybe Intoxicated Frenzy if you use it to spam Stunning Strike. This means the Drunken Master is a great platform for a less mystical monk, one who's more raw and physical in their approach. This is fantastic for players who really want to lean into the martial arts aspect of the monk class. The most unique feature of this subclass is redirect attack, so this is what we will be building around. The reason why it doesn't work well usually though, is that monks typically don't want to find themselves in melee with multiple enemies. They typically have neither the armor class or the hit points to last long there. But if we build our Drunken Master to be more like a tank, or maybe a Tankard, and had some way of positioning enemies so we can guarantee we'd have at least 1 enemy within 5 feet of us at all times, then redirect attack can be an effective way of turning powerful enemy attacks against themselves. These requirements will drive the build, so let's look at how we achieve them. The inspiration for this build is Best Boy from the manga and anime series Naruto. Like most of the characters in that show, Rock Lee is a shinobi in training. However, what separates Rock Lee from the others is his inability to master the more mystical aspects of the ninja craft. He's instead a master of hard work, training relentlessly to the point that his body's endurance is far beyond his peers. He's also just a really sweet guy, as he's working so hard because he wants to protect others. The way Rock Lee focuses on physical abilities rather than magical makes him an ideal fit for the Drunken Master subclass, and as we get into the build, we'll actually see one other parallel with this popular character. For our race, there's an important feat we need. However, we may be able to get away with acquiring it with our first ability score increase when we reach level 4 in a class. For now, we're going to assume we've gone with Variant Human. For our feat, we're going to pick up the skill Expert feat, gaining the Athletics skill and expertise in that skill. Like Rock Lee, we're going to be very physically capable. It's also going to give us an extra +1 modifier to an ability score we can put wherever we want. This means we can put a +1 into 3 different ability scores. For our extra skill as a human, we're going to pick up Sleight of Hand. Our skill choices on this build are actually very important, and we'll see why later. For our ability scores, we're using Point Buy, and we're going to take a 12 in Strength and add 1 of our +1 modifiers to make it a 13. For Dexterity and Constitution, we're going to take 2 15s and add our 2 remaining +1 modifiers to make them both 16. For Wisdom, we'll have 13, and we're going to dump both Intelligence and Charisma, with an 8 in each of them. As we can see, this character has fantastic ability score increases, but is very weak in its other stats, which is appropriate for Rock Lee and speaks to our abilities as a primarily physical character. For our background, the skills and tool proficiencies are actually very important on this build. We're going to take the criminal background for deception and stealth and proficiency in thieves tools. We'd reflavor this to reflect our ninja training, as all of these are skills we'd expect to have acquired from that. Level 1, Barbarian 1. For our first level, we're not taking Monk. No, we're starting in Barbarian. Level 1 Barbarian gets us a lot of benefits, which Monk does not. Firstly, our starting hit points will be 15 rather than 11. We also gain the Barbarian's Rage feature. Twice a day, we can spend a bonus action to go into a Rage. This gives us resistance to slashing, piercing and bludgeoning damage dealt against us. It also gives us advantage on our strength-based saving throws and ability checks. This means, in addition to having expertise in athletics, which currently gives us a +5 in that skill, we can gain advantage on these checks while we're raging. This gives us excellent odds to knock a creature prone or grapple them. Lastly, Rage also increases the damage we deal with strength-based attacks by 2. We're mainly going to be relying on attacking with our dexterity and athletics checks, but there will be occasions where this could be useful later. We also gain the unarmored defense feature, so our armor class without armor is equal to 10 plus our constitution modifier plus our dexterity modifier. This is great, as unlike a monk, this ties our unarmored defense to our constitution modifier instead of our wisdom modifier. This means we can double down on our role as a tank by increasing both our hit points and armor class at the same time. We can also benefit from a shield in addition to our unarmored defense, so our armor class at level 1 is 16 or 18 with a shield. This is as good as any fighter and barbarian can usually hope to have at this level. This plus our 15 hit points and our ability to rage makes us very tanky. From Barbarian, we gain 2 skills from a defined list. I recommend picking up both Perception and Survival. Our Wisdom modifier is okay at a +1, and these skills fit the theme of a shinobi really well. For our equipment, we're proficient with all martial weapons. With our starting gear then, I'd recommend we'd pick up a rapier and a short sword. These both allow us to use our dexterity to attack, but the short sword will count as a monk weapon, which could be useful later. At some point, we'll want to buy a longbow as well. It's not a monk weapon, but we're proficient in it, and we have great dexterity, so it's a useful long-ranged option. Finally, if we can buy a shield, we should do so as soon as possible. However, on this build, I would ask your Dungeon Master if we could reflavor your shield to be a set of weighted bracers that kind of double as arm guards. Flavor is free, and I think most DMs will agree to this, as the theme we're going for is really fun. Just remember that while we are wearing them, we only actually have one free hand, so we can't, for instance, grapple more than one creature. At this level, our aim should be to grapple or trip an enemy and keep them away from our allies, while we use our tankiness as a shield for them. We can also deal okay damage with dexterity-based weapons. Level 2. Barbarian 1, Monk 1. Barbarian serves as the base for our build, giving us our tanking and grappling abilities. Now it's time to focus on our monk levels. We pick up Monk 1. Note, we can't use the unarmored defense feature we gained from Monk, as we already picked this up from Barbarian. As for our martial arts ability, this allows us to make an unarmed strike using our bonus action when we make an attack using a monk weapon or an unarmed strike. However, we can only do this while we aren't wearing armor, a shield, or holding non-monk weapons. At level 2 we see we have effectively 2 modes of combat, and this is the other way this build parallels Rock Lee besides focusing on just physical capabilities. In his frankly iconic battle with Gaara during the tune-in exams, it's revealed that Rock Lee trains using weighted bracers. The moment he removes them and drops them to reveal that each of them weighs like hundreds of pounds is both hilarious and kind of badass. And I'm so happy that this build effectively allows us to convey that effect. While wearing a shield, or if we're reflavoring them, wearing weighted bracers, our armor class is really good at 18. But we can't use our martial arts feature. This is more of a defensive mode, which I'll call heavy mode. However, when we remove the bracers, we enter light mode. This reduces our armor class to 16, but it allows us to use our unarmed strike as a bonus action, provided we aren't holding a non-monk weapon. This gives us a decent damage boost, doubling the number of attacks we can make at this level, and reflects our sudden burst in agility. Both modes of combat are completely viable, but it takes an action to doff or don a shield, so we'll probably need to decide ahead of a fight which mode we want to be in. Level 3. Barbarian 1, Monk 2. Continuing with our monk levels, we're going to gain the unarmored movement feature. While we're in light mode, this increases our movement speed to 40 feet. Notably, we still benefit from this while holding non-monk weapons. We also gain the key feature. This gives us 2 key points at level 2 and it increases by 1 for each level of monk we have. We can spend these key points in the following ways. Flurry of Blows allows us to spend a key point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. We can only do this after we take the attack action. Thankfully though, grappling and tripping count as special attacks we take as part of the attack action, so we can combine Flurry of Blows with these. If we're in heavy mode, we only deal 2 damage on each hit, or 4 if we're in a rage, and we only have a +3 to hit. But if we're in light mode, we deal 1d4 plus 3 damage, which is about 5.5 damage on average, and we have a +5 to hit. So we probably don't want to use Flurry of Blows while we're in heavy mode, but it is an option to keep in mind as the bonus damage from rage makes it reasonably viable. Step of the Wind lets us spend a key point to take the dash or disengage actions as a bonus action, as well as doubles our jump distance. With a strength score of 13, we'll actually have a pretty good jump distance. Our long jump is 13 feet, which doubles to 26 feet with Step of the Wind. Our high jump, meanwhile, is usually 4 feet, but doubles to 8 feet, which would allow us to jump over most medium-sized creatures without difficulty, which could be useful if we're trying to get past an enemy without any other options of getting around them. We can still use this feature while in heavy mode, which can help make up for not gaining the extra movement from the unarmored movement feature. Lastly, with Patient Defense, we can spend a key point and a bonus action to take the dodge action. If we're in heavy mode, our AC is 18, so adding disadvantage to attacks against us will make us very hard to hit. If we pair this with Rage, giving us resistance to physical forms of damage, then our tanking ability becomes very much unmatched. If we're using the optional monk features from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we can also make a weapon we're proficient in our monk weapon. I'd probably pick a weapon with a d10 damage die like the longsword, warhammer or battle axe, as this will increase our damage most. Eventually it won't matter too much whether we use a weapon or an unarmed strike kit for damage, but for now one of these d10 weapons is probably our best option. At this point, we can double down with either tanking, controlling, or damage dealing, thanks to our key-powered features, giving us a lot of flexibility. We can use Patient Defense to make us more tanky, we can use Step of the Wind to help us grapple and drag creatures around the battlefield further, and we can use Flurry of Blows for a boost to our damage. And all of these features can be used whether we're in heavy or light mode. This flexibility gives us a lot of interesting tactical options which are sure to keep combat interesting. Level 4. Barbarian 1, Monk 3. At level 4 we gain our Monk subclass, the Way of the Drunken Master. The additional performance proficiency and proficiency in brewing tools is nice, but we're going to focus on the Drunken Technique feature. As a reminder, when we use Flurry of Blows, we also benefit from the disengage action and increase our movement speed by 10 feet. We gain this extra movement even while in heavy mode. I can see Drunken Technique improving our options in two ways. Firstly, it gives us the ability to perform hit and run attacks. While in light mode, it would give us a speed of 50 feet, letting us make 3 attacks in a single turn before retreating to safety without fear of opportunity attacks. It's also useful if we want to move a grappled enemy past other creatures, as the extra movement and the disengage action can let us move them around more freely, with the added bonus that we can make a couple of extra punches on them for good measure. In addition to our subclass, we gain the Deflect Missiles feature. As a reaction, when we're hit by a missile attack, we can reduce the damage by 1d10 plus our dexterity modifier plus our monk level. This improves our tanking ability. If we reduce the damage of these weapons completely, we can also spend a key point and a reaction to throw the missile at another creature. It's a bit expensive, but it could be useful. Level 5. Barbarian 1, Monk 4. At level 5, our proficiency bonus increases to +3. Because we have expertise, this gives us a total of +7 on our athletics checks. So even though our strength score isn't very high, with just a +1 modifier, our grapple and trip checks are still very reliable. We also gain our first ability score increase. Here we have a difficult choice between increasing our dexterity or our constitution score. Because of our unarmored defense, increasing either of these will improve our armor class. On the one hand, increasing our constitution will increase our hit points by our level. Meanwhile, increasing dexterity will boost our attacks and dexterity based skills. But most importantly, it will also boost our initiative, and sometimes winning initiative is more important for our health than having higher hit points, as it lets us activate our rage and our patient defense sooner, and lets us take a better position on the battlefield. Because of this, we'll be increasing our dexterity first, but this could just as easily have been our constitution instead. This means our light mode armor class is 17, and our heavy mode armor class is 19. This is better than a fighter wearing just plate mail, so we're doing pretty well. We also gain slow fall. This allows us to reduce falling damage by 5 times our dexterity modifier. This is actually really useful on a grappler build, as this will allow us to take full advantage of falling obstacles better. As a grappler, we can often pick up and drop creatures over drops, such as out of windows, off cliffs, off balconies, etc. Having slowfall means we can either drop with them or follow them too, without much fear of taking damage ourselves. Additionally, if we ourselves attract the same tactics from monsters because we happen to be very close to that same cliff or balcony, then we are going to reduce most of the damage if we fall also. We also have resistance to physical damage while raging, so at this level we could potentially mitigate a lot of falling damage. Level 6. Barbarian 1, Monk 5. At Monk 5 we gain extra attack and Stunning Strike. Stunning Strike isn't going to be very useful on this character, as we have a low DC of just 12, but it might be useful in an emergency. Our better control option would be to rely on tripping and then grappling creatures using extra attack. When a creature is prone, they will have disadvantage on their melee attacks, and attacks within 5 feet of them will have advantage against them. So this helps us tank better and also allows us and other melee fighters to land more hits against them. And with our great athletics checks, it will be difficult for a creature to break the grapple, and the chances are high that they will try to. However, if they do spend the action or attacks to attempt to shove us away, then we've effectively taken away some of their action economy, which is also a big benefit. Level 7. Barbarian 1, Monk 6. We're at Monk 6 and we're getting the feature which I feel defines this build. Tipsy Sway. The first part of this feature allows us to get from prone by spending just 5 foot of movement, but the really great feature we've been building towards is Redirect Attack. As a reminder, here's what it says. When a creature misses us with a melee attack roll, we can spend 1 key point as a reaction to cause that attack to hit one creature of our choice, other than the attacker, that we can see within 5 feet of us. Because of the way we've built our Drunken Master, we can take full advantage of this ability. Let's review. Firstly, we have no problem being surrounded by enemies. We have decent hit points, thanks to starting with Barbarian, and we have resistance to most common damage types. Next, we need to ensure most attacks miss us. Thankfully, we have a decent armor class in light mode and a great one in heavy mode. And we can cause attacks against us to have disadvantage by either holding creatures prone or using patient defense. Lastly, we can force multiple creatures to be within 5 feet of us. For this, we simply need to take a creature we have grappled and move them with us towards another creature. If we wanted to be high risk about it, we could even drag a creature while provoking attacks of opportunity from another one. This is great, as most monster attacks at this level are way more powerful than what we can deal ourselves, and they can often deal other effects besides damage too. In any fight with multiple enemies, I think this is going to be our go-to strategy. Tank attacks and try to redirect them where possible. There is another possibility too. If we're fighting an enemy with a high armor class and an ally with a really strong attack is having trouble hitting them, they could potentially target us instead. A great character for this might be a paladin with Great Weapon Master. If they're attacking us with disadvantage, which they could possibly choose to do if they close their eyes when they attack us, or if we're happening to use patient defense, and if they then have a -5 penalty to their attacks due to the Great Weapon Master feat, they are likely to miss us. Then we can force that attack to hit the enemy with the high armor class, no matter what the paladin rolls. It doesn't matter if that creature's armor class is 30, it doesn't matter if they had disadvantage or the shield spell. According to the rules of Tipsy Sway, it just hits. I think this trick is a bit niche, but it's also really cool. This could be useful in climactic moments where an ally really needs to hit a creature. Lastly, all our unarmed attacks are magical, so we can reliably get around damage resistance. Level 8. Barbarian 1, Monk 6, Fighter 1. Now that we've reached the main goal of our build, everything else we're going to do is build on it. At level 8, we're going to take a fighter level. Firstly, we gain Second Wind. This means we can recover a small bit of health as a bonus action. It's not much at 1d10 plus our fighter level, but if we're raging, then that small bit of health can go a long way. If we don't use it in battle, it can still be a good way to get some extra healing during our short rests. For our fighting style, we're going to take the unarmed fighting style from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This means that our unarmed strikes will deal 1d8 of damage while we aren't holding a weapon or shield, or a d6 while they are. So our damage for our unarmed strikes while we aren't wearing braces is increased very slightly, and we're probably better off switching from using a weapon than to just attacking with unarmed strikes, as it'll also increase the damage we do with our Flurry of Blows or bonus action. But more importantly, when we are wearing braces, our damage with our unarmed strikes is much better, increasing from 1 to 1d6. This means while we're raging in heavy mode, we have 1d6 plus 1 from our strength modifier and plus 2 from our rage bonus. This is only 2 points less damage on average than we would have if we were in light mode, so using Flurry of Blows in heavy mode is a little more useful. Our hit rate is still not great at a +4 as opposed to the +7 in light mode, but if we have managed to gain advantage on the roll, for example if the creature was knocked prone, then our odds of hitting are overall pretty good. Additionally, while we're grappling a creature, we can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to one of them at the start of our turn. This isn't much, but it's a small reward for grappling creatures, and it could potentially be the difference between a spellcaster maintaining their concentration or not, since the damage is guaranteed, and it will provoke an additional concentration check. I think, rules as written, this grapple damage we're dealing isn't considered magical. However, I think a lot of Dungeon Masters would accept that it should be, as our monks' unarmed strikes are. Level 9. Barbarian 1, Monk 6, Fighter 2. We also gain another fighter level. This gives us our always useful action surge ability. This means on our turn we can make up to 6 attacks, 2 from each of our attack actions and 2 from Flurry of Blows. Our damage on each hit isn't fantastic, as we aren't going to add anything like Great Weapon Master to them or Smites, but it's still nice for a small bit of burst damage. Alternatively, we can use Action Surge to initiate more trips and grapples, so potentially we can pin down 2 enemies in one turn if we have both hands available. One last thing we can do is use our action granted by Action Surge to switch between heavy and light mode by taking an action to doff or don our weighted bracers. I think normally spending an action to do this in combat is really expensive, particularly since doing so means we can't use our action to make a martial arts attack or Flurry of Blows, since they both require we make an attack. However, as part of an action surge round, it's much less painful, so if we suddenly find we need to change tactics to either have a higher armor class or increase our speed and damage, then it's a useful option. Level 10. Barbarian 1, Monk 6, Fighter 3. Up to now, one thing we haven't been able to do is grapple or trip creatures which are huge or larger. Also, we've only been able to rage 2 times a day, so we can only gain advantage on strength checks in 2 combats. But at level 10, we can finally fix both of these problems by taking another fighter level and taking the Rune Knight subclass. This gives us the feature Giant's Might. As a bonus action, we can increase our size from medium to large. This means we can grapple and trip creatures which are huge. For our Rock Lee build, I like to think of this as a huge power-up, like us moving much quicker and effectively occupying a much larger area while increasing our strength. Also, one weapon attack or unarmed strike we make can add 1d6 of extra damage. This extra damage will be magical on an unarmed strike, thanks to our monk levels. It also gives us advantage on all our strength ability checks and saving throws. We can use the Giant's Might feature proficiency bonus times a day, which is currently 4. This means between Rage and Giant's Might, we can gain advantage on our athletics checks on up to 6 combats in a day. This should be more than enough to cover our combats in an average adventuring day, and we may even have 1 or 2 left over that we can activate simply to make better athletics checks. Rage, however, does make us better at tanking, thanks to giving us resistance against physical forms of damage, so there may even be cases where we'd want both active. For example, if we wanted to tank while grappling a huge creature. Additionally, we gain 2 giant runes. The ones which I really like on this build are the Cloud Rune and the Fire Rune. Cloud Rune really complements our redirect attack feature from Drunken Master. This time, when an attack hits us or an ally within 30 feet, we can use our reaction to make it target a different creature within 30 feet of us, using the same attack roll. This means whether a creature hits or misses us, we can redirect that attack. We can only use this once per short rest though, so think of it as a good insurance policy for when our usual redirect attack feature doesn't work. For example, when a creature gets a natural 20 on us. Fire Rune, meanwhile, sort of makes up for us missing out on Stunning Strike. When we hit a creature with a weapon attack, we can force them to make a strength saving throw against a DC determined by a Constitution modifier, which is okay at the moment, and we'll be increasing it further as we level up. If the creature fails their saving throw, they're restrained for 1 minute, meaning their movement is 0, they have disadvantage on their attacks against them are made with advantage, and they make dexterity saving throws with disadvantage. Additionally, they then take 2d6 fire damage at the start of each of their turns, until they can make a successful saving throw against the effect. The feature does specify you need to make an attack with a weapon, however, so we can't apply this effect using an unarmed strike. Thankfully, we have lots of other options. We could hit a flying creature with it using a longbow attack, causing them to drop out of the sky if their flight isn't magical. At close range, we could use a dedicated weapon or any other monk weapon. In all cases, I like to think of it as us attaching a magical seal to whatever creature we're hitting. Cloud Rune and Fire Rune have other features that come into play which benefit our skill checks. Fire Rune effectively gives us expertise with any tools we're already proficient in, so we'll be excellent at using the thieves tools we picked up from our criminal background. Even our proficiency in brewing supplies will have increased, which is kind of hilarious. Suddenly we've become this master brewer. Meanwhile, Cloud Rune gives us advantage on our sleight of hand and deception checks. We gained proficiency in these from our human and criminal backgrounds. Our deception isn't great as we dumped charisma, but overall it's a +3, and adding blanket advantage onto that makes us pretty good at it. These two runes, in addition to the careful skill choices we made at level 1, makes us very effective in a number of roguelike skills. This makes us a great infiltrator, and it also ensures that out of combat we have a lot to offer. Overall, getting Rune Knight on this build is huge. It's just a shame we had to wait until 10th level because we needed to reach 6th level in Monk and then 1st level in Barbarian first. Level 11. Barbarian 1, Monk 6, Fighter 4. At level 11 we're going to add another Fighter level to get an additional ability score increase. Again, we are torn between Dexterity and Constitution. Our Fire Rune makes getting Constitution higher even more attractive since that will increase its save DC, but overall I still prefer to get our initiative as high as possible, so we'll take the +2 to our Dexterity score to max it out at 20. This means our armor class is now 18 without the weighted braces and 20 with it. There's a bigger discrepancy in our attacks while we're wearing bracers versus without them, but an armor class of 20 in combination with patient defense and resistance to physical damage while raging makes for a really great tank, so I can still see us swapping between light and heavy mode depending on what the situation needs. Level 12. Barbarian 1, Monk 7, Fighter 4. For our final level of this build, we're going to return to Monk, making us a Monk 7. This gives us an additional key point as well as a lot of great defensive features. Evasion makes us a lot more tanky as it'll half any damage caused by failing a dexterity saving throw, or negate all the damage if we pass it. We also gain Stillness of Mind, which can allow us to shake off either the charmed or frightened effects using our action, provided we can use our action as part of our turn. This is great as we only have a +1 on our wisdom saving throws. Additionally, we could potentially choose to use our action surge to activate this ability, and then we'd still have the rest of our turn to use as normal, beyond level 12. So by the time we reach level 12, we see we have a unique melee combatant who can easily grapple, trip enemies, and redirect attacks. This could make for a very fun experience at the table, as we would run into melee and cause lots of chaos while the rest of our party attacks safely from afar. It's hard to be sure how effective redirecting enemy attacks will be, as the damage that creatures can deal varies wildly. However, sometimes it's going to be worth that key point, and when it is, it's probably going to be brutal. We're also very tanky, with decent hit points thanks to taking levels in Fighter and Barbarian, the ability to rage, being able to bump our armor class all the way to 20 if needed, being able to dodge as a bonus action, and having the evasion ability. We can also in a lot of cases shake off the charmed and frightened effects when they occur. We'll be very hard to take down. Meanwhile, out of combat, we're really excelling in the skills you might associate with a ninja: stealth, sleight of hand, deception, and lockpicking. We're also easily the muscle of the group when physical checks pose an obstacle. Beyond level 12, I can see a very logical progression for our character. Firstly, we'd increase our monk level to 8. This gains us another ability score increase, letting us finally increase our constitution, which makes us a better tank, with a big bump to hit points, takes our armor class to 19 or 21 with a shield, and increases the DC of our Fire Rune. After this, we'd return to Barbarian. Level 2 Barbarian gives us Danger Sense, giving us advantage on all our dexterity saving throws we can see. In addition to our +5 dexterity score and evasion, we'll be able to withstand dexterity saving throw damage really well. We also gain reckless attack. This means that while we're in heavy mode and using unarmed strikes with our strength modifier, we can give ourselves advantage on those attacks. Our damage is still weaker than when we're in light mode, but being able to switch on advantage like that is a useful ability to have. We would then gain a 3rd level in Barbarian. There are 2 great options here in my opinion. Ancestral Guardians would allow us to draw more attacks away from allies, as when we attack a creature while in a rage, it will cause that creature to have disadvantage on its attacks against other creatures that turn. Personally though, on this build, I prefer the path of the Totem Barbarian, where we'd go for the Bear Totem. The Bear Totem feature will give us resistance to all forms of damage except Psychic while we're raging. This is really important as we need to be able to resist as much damage as possible when we're grappling creatures, and plenty of them, especially at high levels, will be dealing plenty of damage which isn't physical. Also, at level 3 we gain an additional use of Rage per day, helping us tank during more battles each day. Next we go to Barbarian 4, giving us another ability score increase which we will put into Constitution, maxing it out at 20. This means at level 16 our armor class is maxed out at 20 or 22 with a shield, depending on which mode we're using. From here, neither Fighter 5 or Barbarian 5 are particularly attractive, as we already have the extra attack feature. Because of this, I'd actually put the rest of our levels back into Monk. At Monk 9, we gain improved movement options. The ability to run up walls could be really fun. If we're grappling an enemy, we could take them with us and then drop them, causing them damage and knocking them prone. Or possibly we could run across liquid and drop grappled creatures into it without falling in ourselves. At Monk 10 we gain Purity of Body. This is a small benefit, but immunity to poison on top of all our resistances from Bear Totem Barbarian gives us plenty of opportunities to minimize damage. Our movement bonus now has increased to plus 20, so our base speed is 50 feet or 60 feet when we use Flurry of Blows. At Monk 11 we gain another feature from Drunken Master. Drunkard's Luck allows us to cancel out disadvantage on d20 rolls we make. Because this monk is actually very good at a lot of different skill abilities, we can see ourselves leading a lot of those important checks like lockpicking or stealthing or deception, and being able to cancel out disadvantage using this ability can just help reinforce a roll better. Our martial arts attacks are now dealing a d8, so we no longer need to rely on the unarmed fighting style to give us that damage die in light mode. Finally, at Monk 12 we gain one last ability score increase. We have a lot of options for this, but overall I think the Tough Feat would be the way to go, and an excellent campaign capstone, as this will give us 40 extra hit points, completing our journey as a tank. That brings us to the end of our build. I really enjoyed putting this build together, and I really hope that it finds a lot of love out there. You showed a lot of love for the Bleed Singer Monk that I delivered last time, and I know I just really love the concept of being able to lean into this Rock Lee-like character who isn't particularly bright in terms of intelligence or charisma or even wisdom, but is just well-meaning, wants to protect his friends, and is going to take on a lot of damage as well as turn a lot of damage against his enemies. That concludes this build. I think probably the next build I will do will be based on the Long Death Monk. I did originally promise I'd do this one next, however, because of the theme that I'll be going for with it, I think it'll work a bit better in the season of Halloween, so I'm looking forward to getting to that next time. But otherwise, thank you everyone for joining me. I've been the Dungeon Doctor. Please do continue to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on this build. I've really enjoyed hearing them all, and otherwise I look forward to seeing you all next time.